Hello, everybody. It is me, Blink14, back again with another video. Today's video it's a little different. So this is gonna be a review of Skyward Sword HD, or rather, Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword HD. Now, I want you to keep in mind that I did not write a script because I've been pretty busy preparing for other videos, doing homework, just focus doing some college courses, and then obviously regular stuff, and I'm just dealing with life and been pretty busy, so I didn't really have enough time to write a script. So this is all going off by my regular head. So if there are awkward pauses in there, I'm sorry. I'm probably just gonna end up cutting that and just going to the part when I start talking again. So I apologize in advance. This is my first time doing this type of review, so this is definitely different. So I think we should to start this off, we should definitely start off from the very beginning. So what we should do for this review is we're gonna go through each part of this game that I find most significant to me, either being good or bad, and rating it on a point scale of something out of 10, like 8 out of 10, 7 out of 10, 0 out of 10, and then give my overall conclusion to this game. So I want to start off with the story. The story of the game it was okay. It wasn't horrible, it wasn't amazing, it was okay. You see, Zelda games aren't really meant for their amazing storytelling, and if you just start, and it gets even worse if you start bringing in other Zelda games, and then you have to bring in the timeline, it's just a huge mess. So that's why most people don't really focus on the story of the game. I'm one of those people. But for the story in this game, it wasn't that hard to understand. This game was specifically meant to follow the story of how the original Zelda timeline started and how Hyrule was even made in the first place. And these types of stories are very interesting to me because these are the types of stories that I would like to see, but sometimes they don't really go that well. For instance, in Kingdom Hearts, the type of main story that was to hold a background to even start up the whole series of Kingdom Hearts was the Keyblade War. That would have been really cool to see in game and actually play through it. But part of me feels like it just wouldn't be as great, you know? And that's kind of where Skyward Sword lies in there. The story in itself is again simple, not hard to understand. It just wasn't outstanding. It's mostly due to the fact you can really split it up. You're just a dude with a sword. You leave your own hometown because your girl got destroyed by a freaking tornado. So you gotta go save her. Turns out she's a goddess. You gotta do a bunch of other stuff. Upgrade your sword. Have an annoying partner while on the way. Learn some kind of song to prove yourself. Get the Triforce. Defeat the evil dude. It turns out you gotta go back to the past now and defeat him again. And then you finish the game. That's pretty much it in a short explanation. It's not that hard. It's not that great. It's just okay. That's why for me, I'm gonna rate the story a solid 7 out of 10. Pretty good if you ask me. Now, next thing I want to do is talk about the art style and music. Now, this one I'm gonna try to give it an 8 out of 10. A couple of reasons why. Now, the visuals in Skyward Sword is definitely not a huge improvement, an improvement from the original game because again, it's in HD and it looks a lot more cleaner and sharper. And overall, the graphics of Skyward Sword was actually not that bad to me. For me, though, my favorite graphics are definitely in um, Twilight Princess and Wind Waker. Twilight Princess because of its realistic look, and Wind Waker because I love the cartoonish look in it, which is pretty ironic because a lot of people complained about that in Wind Waker to begin with. Um, and with Skyward Sword, you can kind of see they're trying to do both. They just weren't entirely successful. They were trying to do what Breath of the Wild eventually did and had a good mixture between Twilight Princess and Wind Waker. And that type of art style is so clean and so great that I definitely like it. That's why Skyward Sword definitely did a good job on it. It just wasn't an outstanding job like how it was for Breath of the Wild. But again, no major complaints. Now, for the music, again, it was great. It just wasn't my taste. For music, everybody else has their own different opinions of different types of tastes they like. Like my friend loves raps, and I I like them too, but they're not my favorites. Types of favorites that I like are things from Persona. I also like some Sonic. Uh, Rock and roll is pretty good too, and techno is pretty great. And with Skyward Sword, I can't really describe the music type of taste it has. It just wasn't directly my type of taste. It wasn't bad. It's not like my ears were bleeding from listening to it. It was definitely great. The soundtracks were great to listen to. They're just not the kind of type of soundtracks I would listen to if I, just want to listen to some music. For Zelda types of music I really like, aside from Twilight Princess soundtrack, most of Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask, and definitely the Wind Waker, especially with the Wind Waker's boss in the desert. No, it was in the desert region. It was, well, I don't remember, but I'm pretty sure I put it on screen of what the boss is called. But yeah, that's why I decided to rank both the visual arts and music 8 out of 10. Maybe an 8.5 out of 10. Okay, so moving on from that, now that we've gone through the parts of the games that I did like, let's go move on to a couple of the serious points. First off, controls. Now, if this was the regular game I was playing in Skyward Sword back on the Wii, this would have been a solid 0. I'm not even joking. The motion controls just did not work. I'm sorry, they literally did not work. Constantly swinging around with the Wii remotes and the nunchucks for shield bashing and slashing swords just simply did not work. And for me, it was even a worse situation. For me, both my nunchucks and Wii remotes kept disconnecting for some reason. And when you're in a serious battle, that's a huge problem. And that's the thing I could not stand about the game, that I literally just couldn't keep playing the game. Even, it's a Sakura who played it. Friggin' could even play it. Because the controls just didn't work. But this is the new Skyward Sword HD with the new controls. And they definitely are a huge improvement. um, they're not a perfect improvement, though. First and foremost, the stick controls do work. I just wish they would have just gone with regular button controls. I don't know what was the process that made it so difficult, but I just really wish they just went with that process. I guess there are points where it just wouldn't make sense and you would still need that because the game would operate because it was based on motion controls. But still, I really didn't like those controls for motion controls. Now, the stick controls, they are a lot better, but they still have the motions of the motion controls that I just don't like. Swinging the sword with the L stick, I think, was definitely interesting. It wasn't perfect. No, it was the right stick, actually. I think so. And the shield bashing was perfect, though. Definitely was a huge improvement. And, well, it's honestly pretty much it I can say. For the controls overall, I would say give it a solid 8. That's pretty much it. They aren't incredible controls because, well, they still aren't the types of controls I would play on normal video games with some kind of button using for attack, jump, or running, or normal controls you'll find in normal games. That's not what Skyward Sword did. It's definitely a different type of control style, but it still worked. So that's why I give it an 8. Now, time to dig into the deep stuff. Let's go over bosses. Oh boy. Now, many of the bosses were not outstanding to me. They definitely were just bosses. The first three bosses were definitely just, well, bosses. Sure, I did struggle with them, but relatively speaking, can't speak right now. They were pretty simple. I don't know why I struggled with them to begin with. So they weren't that big of a deal, and then definitely over time you can definitely get a huge overall playstyle over it and just get used to it. Now, the next three bosses after that, yeah, um, kind of the same thing. The shipyard boss was not great though. That one just, yeah. As soon as I saw that thing, I was like, oh great, here we go again. It's yeah. And the Gearham boss rematch. I want to talk about rematches in a little bit. It's one special boss that needs to be talked about really hard. But the one boss I did like was definitely the I don't remember what it was called, but it was the statue golden boss that used possession, and you get to rip off its arms and use its sword to chop it up, and it's just so great. That's definitely one of my favorite bosses in the entire Zelda franchise, and probably on my top 10 favorite overall bosses in video games. Definitely liked it. It was pretty great. That's one outstanding thing I found in Skyward Sword that I definitely did like. Now, what else are we missing here? There's the Sky Boss, or was kind of the Sky Boss. In the original game, I did struggle with that a lot, and it pissed me off. But luckily, since my controller isn't broken like it was for the Wii, I was able to take this down pretty much more simpler than before. Though to be fair, learning how to defeat the thing is, well, it's not natural. I definitely did struggle on trying to remember. That's something I did have a complaint about for that one. Now, for the final boss, Demise, is definitely with epic atmosphere. It just wasn't final boss material, you know? They did try the visual arts to make it really outstanding. I still like the Golden Statue boss a lot more. And if we're talking about other final bosses in Zelda history, there have definitely been better bosses, but that doesn't mean that this boss is the worst final boss. Though I can't say 100% because I haven't played all the Zelda games yet, but I can definitely say boss is definitely better than the one in Zelda CDI, okay? Because nobody wants to talk about that. But like when I'm talking about like good final boss battles, I'm talking about ones in the original Ganondorf for Ocarina of Time or Twilight Princess or Wind Waker. Those were definitely really interesting and great bosses. Now, the next thing I want to bring up is the let me see, it was rematch bosses. Ooh, okay. To start off a mediocre one. Let's talk about Girahim. Now you fight Girahim not once, not twice, but three different times. All, by the way, in the same type of style. Okay, none of them are different. I want you to remember that. None of them are directly different from each other. The only one I found different was the third one, and that's only because it's slightly harder. That doesn't mean I hate the boss. It's just they're all basically the same thing. You're basically fighting a sword, so can't expect much out of it. Now, the boss I hate the most out of the entire Zelda franchise, and probably most games I've played up to this point, is the Imprisoned. You fight the thing not once, not twice, but three times. The first time is definitely the easier time because you're just hitting its toes. Why? I don't know. Keep in mind that the first time I saw this thing when I was first playing it, I was like, "Oh my god, this would be so cool! I don't know, do some cool moves to take out this giant boss." And it just sounds so. No, it wasn't. It wasn't. You just hit his toes. Yeah, that works. Oh my god! And then the second time you face it, I think you have groups at that time. I cannot remember. But if you do, you would shoot the bomb at it to basically just get each of the time hitting it because its shockwaves are now even worse, making it piss me off even more, especially since when I don't carry furs on me. And it's always a surprise. And then the third time, oh God, the third time is even worse. The chakras are even more powerful and more frequent. So the only way you can actually take it down is by shooting it with some bombs first by Groose. Thank you, buddy. And just taking out its toes and then stunning it. Like it's so dumb. And then you get to get a heart attack because you might fail if you don't get up in time and land on its head, which I missed, by the way, and screwed myself. That's something I cannot stand when they do that to me. When it's just if you don't do this, you lose. That's just something I don't like. Okay, it's horrible. And keep in mind that this thing turns into demise later on. That's the reason why it's called the imprison. It's because that's what imprisoning means to Dark Lords, I guess, in Skyward Sword. It's so weird. So weird. Why? Why is that the case? Uh, but oh my god, the one thing that frustrates me is that at least with Gearham, there was something new that directly differentiated it from each one. I know that consecrates with what I said earlier, but I don't know. It just felt more something at least. With their prison, the new stuff just pissed me off, and yeah, I already talked a lot about why I hate the boss. Either way, for the boss section, since the prison was that bad, and since all the other bosses just simply didn't make up for it, and the good boss isn't good enough to make up for the different mistakes, I'm sorry, I have to give it a 4 out of 10. It's it's just not unstunning to me. Now, let's move on to the. I guess we'll talk about the items. So they're not great. Let's get that right. I'll get that out of the way. First and foremost, you barely use any of them outside of the actual game, and sometimes you use them for stupid things. Like, oh yeah, we'll just use the vacuum cleaner to clean out some dust. 'Cause that's how you use an agent vacuum cleaner. It's why is that even an item? I feel like that's the only reason why they use that. It's for that side quest. Like, what? Oh yeah, just fight the Dark Lord with a vacuum cleaner. That's gonna work well with you. Oh God. And the other stuff like the whip, you barely use just to flip switches. Like, really? The claw shots and the bow and arrow and the beetle are honestly the only items I basically use all the time, and that's why I'm not gonna give them the harsh treatment because they definitely were useful. The claw shots are always iconic for being really useful in other games, anyways. Same thing with the bow and arrow. The beetle is new to Skyward Sword, and that's something that I actually did like about the game. The beetle was basically a cheaper way to use your bow and arrow to hit stuff that you need to for switches and other stuff, and I definitely did like it. So that's why I'm not giving the beetle any crap, basically. But everything else, yes. Now the bombs, those are also okay due to the fact that now you can actually put them in your pockets. Something that none of the Zelda games ever done. You have to keep buying more. But for me, that never really was an issue, just because it just never really was an issue for me. I never really had a problem with rupees. So this game I did a lot. That's because of beetles. All this stuff is freaking expensive. Ugh. But regardless, it's okay. You know, it's fine. Now, the next item I want to talk about is do trying to think. It was trying to slingshot. The slingshot is definitely one of these items that just become so incredibly useless once you get the well, honestly, probably just the beetle, because I mostly just use the slingshot just to stun enemies or sometimes kill bats if I can hit them. Because the bow and arrow just simply outshines it in literally every other way. I definitely use the bow and arrow a lot more than a freaking slingshot. The sucky part about the slingshots is that, well, it could be useful if you can upgrade it while you use the slingshot in the short span of the first dungeon. Because once you get the beetle, the slingshot is basically useless, okay? Like, maybe you sometimes use it to hit switches in both the Elden and the desert region for both the dungeons, but the beetle simply outshines it in literally every other way. And keep in mind, it literally just stuns enemies, it doesn't kill them. But I also do want to bring up how the fact that the slingshot wasn't incredibly useless in Zelda franchise, or it was incredibly useful in the Zelda franchise, because that's the thing, you barely use it. For Twilight Princess, use it for the short segment of both the just getting around to the Found Woods, and for Ocarina, you only used it for when you were youngling. But then again, you could still take some things out with the slingshot, like giant spiders, not just stun enemies. So at least it had some better use in those games than it did with Skyward Sword. But the one thing I really didn't like about it is the upgrade. Now you're probably wondering what's so bad about the upgrade. You upgraded in the Let's Play. That's true, but keep in mind that I only got that because in hero mode, I got all the previous items that I had in a previous save file that my brother did. And luckily, he had some items I can do to upgrade some of the stuff I wasn't technically allowed to upgrade at that time. Keep in mind, the only time you can upgrade that slingshot was right, I do mean this, right at the beginning or around the time you finish the water dungeon of the Skyward Sword, the cursed place. That is freaking such a long way from the Found Woods. You could definitely check from the parts of how long it took me to get from point A to point B. That's dumb. I'm sorry, that's just dumb. If you have an item that you can upgrade, you upgrade it at the very beginning, not towards the end of the game. That's something I did not like. I didn't have to face the problem, but for other people who did it in regular mode, they did. That's just that just sucks, okay? That's something that they should have improved on. But the number one item that's definitely useless eventually in Skyward Sword to upgrade is definitely the shields. These shields simply they're horrible to upgrade with. Now, for me, again, I had a bunch of items to upgrade my stuff early on than really should have, and that made them so much useful. But the problem is that once you get stuff like the Sacred Shield, the Metal Shield and the Wooden Shield are just, ooh, sorry, are useless. And that means all the time you spend on upgrading them was a waste of your time. As a sense, for the Iron Shield specifically, you actually use that less than the Wooden Shield, which I find so weird. The smarter thing to do is definitely use your Wooden Shield for both the Found Woods, because you actually have to for that one, and the desert region, because of electricity. For the iron one, you definitely don't want to use it for the desert region, but some people do. But most people, smarter people, use it for the desert region. That's why, if I would recommend you, I would just upgrade your wooden shield and leave the iron shield in storage after you use it for the Elden region. Because trust me, that thing is not gonna break. Okay, you're fine. And plus, though, once you get the sacred shield, both of them are completely useless because it literally outshines both of them, both in getting hits from electricity and both getting hits from fire. At least the sacred shield, you use it a lot longer than the Hylian shield, or lasts longer than the other two shields until eventually you get the Hylian shield. Then you obviously put that thing in storage too. But the problem also is definitely with the Hylian shield. Even though that thing is incredibly incredible, being completely indestructible, being both fire and electricity proof, it's also something you get at the end of the game once you finish literally everything. That's something I didn't like. Now, with other Zelda games for shield upgrades, sure you got them towards the end of the game, but I feel like you still used them a lot longer than with other shield upgrades. And even then, most of the shield upgrades you use in future games in Zelda franchise, they just felt a lot more special and a lot less you need to get this shield or else you won't survive. Now, Ocarina of Time is the only real game I can think of that was a problem getting from Deku Shield to the Hylian Shield to the Mirror Shield. But keep in mind, between the Deku and Hylian Shield, you get it between both the Deku Tree dungeon and eventually Dagongo's cabin. And once you get the Hylian Shield, you pretty much use that for a majority of the game, and that's why I don't see it as a big deal. It doesn't help that you can definitely save a lot of money getting it for free with if you talk to somebody else ahead of time. Though most people don't do that because we forget. And the Mirror Shield, it really shouldn't be a huge upgrade to the Hylian Shield. Because keep in mind, the Hylian Shield's always been known to be the indestructible shield in all of Zelda franchise. So it's kind of weird how the Mirror Shield is usually the upgrade for it. In Breath of the Wild, there have been times where shields have been completely useless once you get the Hylian Shield, but that takes some time, and Zelda Breath of the Wild is more known for its breakable items, anyways. So, again, might as well have some backups just in case. But with Skyward Sword, no, not really. Now, another item I forgot to touch on that's a good item is the medals, mostly. Some of the medals are definitely useful. The bug medal and the rupee medals are one of those known that have been pretty useful. The heart medal is pretty much useless in hero mode, so that's something I didn't have any use out of. Now the special heart medals, I have stuff to say about that. That actually bothered me. If you needed to equip two heart medals, special heart medals, to get the full 20 hearts in the game, just because the game won't let you, that's something that bothers me really hard. Okay, that's something that really bothers me. You need to equip two items just to get the whole 100% completion. That's something that's dumb to me. I don't know why it can just be automatic like it was in literally every other Zelda game. Sure, Breath of the Wild had that kind of thing where you didn't have the full selection of hearts, but keep in mind you have 28 hearts at the end of the game. That's not much to complain about towards the Skyward Sword. And maybe this would have been a huge issue of getting two separate items to equip on me at all times if my pouch wasn't so small. The pouch situation is a huge problem in the game. You need to have you have a basic small selection of items you can hold at a time. And normally in normal games that wouldn't be a huge issue because if they didn't do that, you become basically God. But for Zelda games, that is a huge issue when it comes to items reduction in your pockets. Because Link's always been known for carrying a bunch of stuff on his hands. So I don't know why he's fine carrying up a couple of claw shots, a huge bow and arrow, slingshots, bombs, and other stuff, but yet he can't hold a couple shields and small bottles? Really? And because of that, I couldn't even have all my bottles on me like I usually do in every other Zelda game. Majora's Mask been known for the huge amount of bottles in the game. I definitely do like that. And Breath of the Wild sure doesn't have bottles, but keep in mind you still have an infinite amount of bottles because elixirs have their own bottle. But with Skyward Sword, you had that situation. You already have to use three item slots just to carry a shield and two heart medallions. That limitates you completely. You can't even have all your upgraded items for your quiver, your seed satchel, and your bomb satchel. You can't even have them all on if you want to have some bottles in there. That's something they just should have improved on. I just didn't like that. So in all, again, I'm going to give this a solid 4 out of 10. I'm sorry, it's just the item situation with the pockets and how most of the items you barely use just simply outweigh the good. Bow and arrow, claw shots, beetles. Now you can upgrade both of those. Ziggurat Row was definitely a great upgrade. It's just that compared to everything else, it just wasn't great. Now that we're done with items, let's talk about dungeons. Oh boy, this is gonna be fun. Oh my god, I did not like any of them. Let's get that straight out of the way. All the dungeons in the game weren't fun, or some of them weren't hard or easy. So we'll start off from the beginning. For the Found One Woods one, for the first dungeon, because yeah, the first dungeon. I want to get into that soon. The first dungeon wasn't hard. So We'll get that out of the way. Same thing with the fire dungeon, wasn't hard. The desert region, that's I hate that one. The special time travel thing with electricity mixed into it and other stuff, it just wasn't fun for me. And I definitely did just get tired eventually of playing it. But I had to keep going. Oh. Now for the second section of the game for dungeons, the the cursed dungeon wasn't bad either. The desert one for shipyard was. That thing was so long. And it wasn't even a good long. It was a bad long. It was also pretty confusing to figure out how the process works. I actually got lost a couple of times just trying to figure it out. And if you're a collector, that means to collect everything in that thing. Trust me when I say it's I had to keep walking around the entire place multiple times, wasting my time, and I got really tired of doing it. Now, the Elden dungeon again wasn't bad. You're hearing me say a bunch of bad, right? Not that bad. Some of them being pretty bad, mostly for the desert region, ironically enough. But the final dungeon is definitely the worst one out of all of them. It's so incredibly confusing. There's no easy way to get around it. You just need to keep messing around with the different rooms to eventually get all the pieces of the Triforce. There's no specific order because, again, it's so random. I only started off from point A to point B just by guessing it. That's it. I did not know what I was even doing in that place. I just did it. And somehow I eventually finished it. Sorry about that. My brother needed something. Anyways, where was I again? Something about dungeons. Let's see. It was dungeons. Where were we? I can now remember. Oh, the Skykeep one. I think I probably got rid of my frustrations about that place already now. Basically, just confusing, huge mess. Was not worth my time. Was definitely one of the worst ones I played in all of Zelda. Is it the entire worst one? I wouldn't say that. There have been worse ones. But at least with those, you can use a map to get through them. This one, you don't. You have your head. Good luck. Okay, this video is getting pretty long already. I don't even realize I've been talking for 31 minutes. Okay, now to get pretty close to finishing off, I want to talk about the one major part I did have about it. The gameplay. Oh boy, this also covers side quests too, by the way. The gameplay is horrible. One major problem I did have about the game was definitely going to the same places over and over and over again. If you could not tell by that pattern of me repeating going to this place to again this place to again this place, you keep going to the same places over and over and over again. Well, basically the same type of thing, just with new coat of paint. And it's not even a good paint. It's like rusted, gross paint. It's like paint of red and then just throwing a bunch of mud on it. It's it's horrible. Usually you go at the same thing plates over and over again and it just gets on my nerves. It really does. I just oh god. I just didn't find it enjoyable. The sacred realms are another part I did not like about the game. The different tests that you need to do to prove yourself through a scary situation of giant deities chasing you down if you just look at them wrong. Ugh. A lot of places, a lot of reasons I hate the sacred realms, the time limits, the parts of touching water, going going near lights. Yeah, that's a thing. Yeah. It wasn't really easy because you need a specific pattern to go through, and if you fail, you need to start over from the very beginning. That got on my nerves. You have no idea how many times I had to keep repeating some of those just to get it right. And they have the audacity to have it so you can retry them whenever you wanted to. Why would you want to do that? Unless you hate yourself, then that's something else. Ugh. Okay. Let's throw some positive vibes into this. Okay. The side quests. Now, the side quests, they weren't, not many of them shined out like they were in Majora's Mask, but to be fair, Majora's Mask set up a really high ball for me in most games when it comes to side quests. That was a huge high ball that Majora's Mask had put on. So I can't really give Skyward Sword so much stuff over the side quest because, well, to be fair, most things haven't really got that much interest to me. It's sorry about that. It's in the Majora's Mask, but some of them did outstand it out. The toilet one was definitely pretty good. The letter, but some of them kind of were awkward. The love confession one with the checkout lady was definitely the awkward one out of most of them. Put me in a weird, awkward position that I wasn't really comfortable with. So I hope everybody understands about that. Uh, I'm not really comfortable with that kind of stuff. I'm not good with love. It's screwed me over in the past because I screwed it over. So I'm not really comfortable with that kind of situations. But if you are, then it's your opinion. And the one side quest that definitely stood out to me of all of them were the Gods of Crystal side quest, and that also involved the love confession. Strangely enough, some of them were pretty interesting to learn the stories of the different residents in Skyloft and dealing with their problems. Some of them did stress me out. The pumpkin minigame one with fetch, sure, it doesn't have you have need a Gods of Crystal, but I still need to go through that to get the heart piece, and that was a really bad minigame I played. I was also dealing with the fact that I had to go talk to some clowns to fix his pinwheel and then deal with his mini game. But to be fair, I somehow got it 100% right. In the riddle game, that mini game was horrible. But maybe it's because I needed to use motion controls. So, there's that. um, another one I should think of. Let me see. It's it's the other pumpkin one. You get to hold pumpkins. That's something that got on my nerves, but it's in practice you can get it done. Um, so yeah, but the major part I did like about the Grazi Crystal one was how you get some kind of different reward after getting a certain amount from the demon. Eventually, when you do, he turns pretty cool, and that's pretty satisfying to me. Some of the Zelda games had that kind of style where you need to collect something of 100 or 80 or 70 or who knows. Like, good example is the Link Between Worlds, where if you collect 100 Mind Mines, you can obviously upgrade all your bunch of stuff and eventually upgrade your Skyward, not Skyward, Spin Attack to God portions. Or with Twilight Princess with the Pulse Souls, and eventually getting the dude back to normal. Similar to the one in Skyward Sword, actually. That was pretty depressing at the end. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Got to Crystal's Psycho is definitely one of those I did like more. The heart piece one, it's normal in Zelda games, so I don't have much to complain about. It's just games, some of them have been a little annoying to me. Definitely some of the mini games, they definitely got on my nerve. Then look at you, Fetch. You really touched me. Not in a good way. In a very disgusting way. But yeah, I was able to get through it. Just was a little frustrating sometimes. So yeah. There's also the Gauze Cubes. The Gauze Cubes were definitely interesting. They had some kind of new element to Skyward Sword. They made it a lot different from other Zelda games. Some of the problem I had with the Gauze Cubes is definitely first off finding them. Some of them were hidden, and I had to search them up to find them because I just couldn't find them regularly. It was a little frustrating. I think eventually Fire will give you some kind of drowsing abilities, but since I collected almost all of them by that time, it just wasn't available for me. And some of the chests you get are kind of useless, especially near the end where when you need to get stuff that you usually get towards the beginning of the game. For some reason, you get them at the end of the game for chests like small seed satchels, bomb satchels, quivers that you should have bought by then. So why? Why would you do that? Yeah. Okay. Um. I'm really tired. The time I'm recording this is pretty late right now. I'm gonna. Is there anything else I should say? Hmm. I guess I can talk about some of the things that made me mad for the second portion of the game. No, not the second portion. I already went over the second realms. The third portion. Ironically enough, while each region had their own problems, the Elden region's actually the one that I didn't have that much problems with. It wait, no, scratch that. Each region had their own different problems in each different sections of games. For Frond Woods, it didn't have that much problem this first part, neither did the second part, but the third part had a huge problem. I want to get over that soon. But first, I want to talk about the next regions after that. The Elder region was fine the first part. The second part, not so much. But I was able to get through it. The third part, it all sucked. Okay? All of it. The third region sucked in every single part of the Skyward Sword thing. If you're wondering what parts I'm talking about finding Zelda, that's the first part. Upgrading your sword, that's the second part. And going to complete the hero song to prove yourself. That's the third part. That's what I'm talking about with parts with this. Now for the found sorry, I have a weird cough. For found woods, the part I did not like is from part 3. In part 3, you need to get all musical instruments, and I'm sorry, that was just horrible to do. Normally, swimming controls aren't that big of a deal with me in Zelda games, especially with when you get upgraded items and make it so much easier. But with Skyward Sword, you don't have that. You don't have unlimited swimming things. And while Breath of the Wild definitely had the elements where you still needed that, at least you had some kind of way to make it a little easier and a little more fun to me. Skyward Sword, no, it didn't. And those shark things really got on my nerves and me dying so many times. And collecting notes, it was so incredibly hard, especially since I couldn't use my Skyward, drowsing ability underwater, so I had to constantly use it on lily pads, and that took so much time. You saw how long that took me to do, and it got so bad that I stepped out for a moment because I just couldn't keep doing this to myself. It was that bad. I remember it was a hero song. Cool. Only two more to go. Ugh. Now for the Elden region parts, I did like second part ironically enough more, so at least that was kind of some kind of reward because the stealth missions was definitely pretty interesting to me. Wait, so I said second part, I meant third part. To eventually get the hero song. Those are one of the easier ones because you just talk to the fire dragon, not to prove yourself towards it. Ugh. But yeah, the problem I had with that was the let me see, it was part two. Got that mixed up. In part two, I didn't like how you could bring Scrapper to the fire dragon to open its mouth with water to open the door. I didn't like that. That kind of got on my nerves a bit. It was a lot worse than I remember it. Sorry, it was a lot better than I remember it. Because in the original version, I remember just going to a corner and just sobbing because of how horrible it was in the Wii version. But now when I play it again, it kind of wasn't that bad. It still wasn't great to me. I just had a couple of issues with that part, but I'm willing to walk away from it. Now for the third region, it all sucked. I went over for the first two parts, but now let's talk about the third part. Healing the Thunder Dragon. You have to go through a huge pain fest of enemies just to drag a time orb to just let him just to see him before you even heal the dude. And then your reward once you do it is the giant boss rush. And I talked about why I didn't, and I already went over the bosses to begin with. The person was definitely a huge problem with me. So no, I did not like the desert region in any of the three parts. It was just bad. And when you go over the three parts like that, the game's pretty simple when you think about it. But even though those three parts are pretty lackluster, it just wasn't I don't know how to describe it. It just wasn't. It just wasn't outpacing like I thought it would be. Okay. Um. So with that in mind, I'm sorry. I need to give the gameplay for part 0 out of 10. I'm sorry. It's just how I personally feel. Now let's finish this off with the conclusion. Is this game the worst game I've ever played? Still, yes. But I haven't played many bad games that's known, like Bubsy or some of the Castlevania games, because I heard some of those were bad. Or Ghosts and Goblins. I haven't played those yet, so I can't really say anything. I have played Zelda 2 and Zelda 2, and surprisingly, I like that more than Skyward Sword. I know I'm gonna get a bunch of hate comments from that, but I just it's a lot more better to me. Just had some kind of vibe to it that I liked, even though it was hard as it was just hard. For me, a game doesn't come from it being hard. It comes from enjoying it or actually wanting to play the game more. That's something Skyward Sword didn't have for me. Even even if I never played it before and I played it completely blind, which I did before, it still wouldn't have been enjoyable for me. Learning some new surprises, it still wouldn't have. I thought this game would be a lot better to me if the controls were fixed, which they were. But then I realized it wasn't about the controls, it was about the game itself. The gameplay, me playing the game. A game should be judged for how fun it is to play, how it is to play the actual game, not about how hard or easy it is. If you go by that, you will hate most games just because you lose a couple of times or because you can't do something a couple of times. You basically judge a game for its wrong reasons. Like, let's say Cuphead, for example. That game is hard, and I can never finish it, but that doesn't mean I hate the game. It has some good qualities to it. It's still a pretty enjoyable game. It has that satisfaction to it that you like. Oddly enough, Zelda 2 has that kind of weird feeling to that, too. How, sure, it was hard, but it was kind of satisfying to go through each area, and the music was pretty good, and the graphics were well done, and they definitely did a huge different adjustment they did from previous game. And also keep in mind that's the second game in the entire franchise. So changing it from a regular adventure game to a platformer wasn't a huge difference. If it would be now if they did that suddenly. But that was back then. That's why I don't give it much stuff. But now when you look at Skyward Sword, that's that a game that's been developed for so long, that's a huge issue I had. It literally took Nintendo 10 somewhat years to make a new game. That's how much of a big impact Skyward Sword had towards Nintendo and pretty much most people at that point. Now, huh. Now there is one more thing I want to bring up. It was um, my personal grudge against this game. That's why I have a grudge. This may be a biased opinion. I understand that, but the other reason why I didn't like this game, besides playing it or the controls, is it was just a disappointment towards the Zelda celebration community. The original Skyward Sword came out around 10 years ago for the Zelda 25th anniversary, and that was not a great anniversary to celebration with. Breath of the Wild, that was a good celebration to celebrate with it. But that didn't come in the 25th anniversary. So that's a huge disappointment. And around that time, I won't say directly at the 25th anniversary because again, I was 10 years ago and I would have been like 6. So I would say a couple years after that, I wanted the game because I liked Zelda. Sure, I wasn't great at playing games, but I still wanted to play it. So I wanted that game for Christmas. So I used my Christmas gift wish on that game. And when I played it, I was so disappointed. So incredibly disappointed because it looked so well, and when I actually played it, I just couldn't play it anymore. So I dropped it and just didn't play it. A couple years back, I went back because I thought my opinions would change. It didn't. I played it fully that time though, and yeah, it just my opinion got even worse. This is my third time going back to it, and my opinion hasn't changed. I'm sorry, it really just hasn't changed. And then now if you look back to it, the anniversary for the 35th anniversary was again Skyward Sword. It's like some kind of curse that this game keeps coming back for some big anniversaries that just was a disappointment. Sure, this anniversary had Breath of the Wild 2 news and some Age of Calamity news, but the main focus was Skyward Sword, and that's just a big bug with me, you know? I assumed it was something similar to what Zelda Mario Day 5th anniversary did. They had a new cool Mario game with uh Super Mario 3D World and Bowser's what's it called Bowser's Fury, I think. And then some Animal Crossing mixed into there and other stuff like Splatoon. But Zelda didn't have that. And that's a disappointment to me. And that's one of the reasons why I have a little grudge against this game. But I want to end in a positive vibe. So my ending conclusion of this is try it. I know it sounds weird that I'm saying this, but you need to try it and play it. I may not like this game, but other people do, and that's perfectly fine. We all have our own opinions on stuff we do like and we don't like. Like again, I like Zelda 2. Sitting with I think the angry video game nerd, he also liked Zelda 2 a bit, even though some people really hate it. That's opinion that I have and AVGN has, you know? That's why we all have our own different opinions, and that's what makes us human. Really, we have our own opinions of how we work, how we get things done. That's how it is, really, in life. And we all should respect each other's opinions on what we have for video games. And this is my personal opinion. If you don't agree with me, that's perfectly fine. I'm not gonna call you insane. Not gonna get mad at you. I'm gonna say, okay, that's your opinion. Cool. Let's move on. That's it. For me, my own thing works like this. I have my business, you have your business. We don't judge each other's business. We're cool. There's no reason why I should judge you. There's no reason why you should judge me. We have our own reasons why we do things. Surely. I think that's how it works. Some people do make huge mistakes. I'm not saying you shouldn't judge some people because they do some mistakes. Huge mistakes that definitely are horrible deeds. But sometimes those mistakes are as bad as you make it look out to be, okay? But yeah, I still think you should try because there are people who do like this game or who worship this game, and that's perfectly fine. That really is. I think that's just no reason why you should give Skyward Sword a try. The HD version, because the Wii version is just horrible at this point. But yeah, I really felt like I had to play this game. I did. No one forced me to do it. It was by my own willingness that I played this game. I needed some type of closure, and I think I did it. I'm pretty much done with it now. I'm not gonna return to it really ever, and I think that's fine. You know, that's some kind of closure that I needed with this game, and I did it. I can now move on. Really, finishing this game again was definitely some kind of huge burden on me that I felt like was on me for so long. And now that I finished playing the game, it's lifted, and now I can move on to other projects that I'm working on for this channel. So that should be pretty cool. So, yeah, that pretty much wraps up this review. I'm sorry it was a pretty long review. I had a lot of stuff to say about this. So the ranking I'm gonna give this game out of 10 is I think probably a 1 or a 2 out of 10. My own opinion. So I hope you guys can respect that. But luckily, I don't think we're gonna have these types of reviews where it's mostly negative, as I think it's supposed to be mostly positive, especially since the games where I'm gonna be playing soon are gonna be pretty good games that a lot of people like. And I hope you guys like it too. I'm gonna explain my plan in a future update video. I have no idea when this video is even gonna be uploaded because it's gonna take me so long to freaking edit. Are you kidding me? So I want you to keep in mind that this video is probably it's not gonna be out for a while, and I'm also gonna need to set up some stuff to get ready for the future videos, and also I need a little break. Some YouTubers needed some kind of break after playing a Let's Play, especially Cheddar Conroy. He usually takes a pretty long break after finishing one Let's Play and moving on to the next one. Because it's not as easy as people make it sound it to be or make it look like it is. Because it really isn't. There's a huge, long process going through this. And it doesn't help that I'm still going into school. And I'm still a high schooler. So I have a lot of other stuff going on besides just YouTube. So that's why it's been a little stressful for me for the past couple of months. But luckily, soon that shouldn't be as much of a problem, especially since I'm getting closer to finishing my college class and then getting closer to finishing high school. So this shouldn't be much of a problem. So yeah. In the next video, we are going to be doing a channel update. That one should be a lot shorter than this one. I'll tell you that right away. It's just going over what the new schedule is going to be. That's right, it's going to be a new schedule. And I'm so excited to do it and share it with you guys. And I just hope this community gets a little bit bigger than it is currently right now. Though who knows, maybe in the future, this community is a whole lot bigger than I thought it would ever be. And that'll be pretty cool. So whoever's watching this right now, though, thank you. Thank you for watching this fully. It means the world to me. People are willing to watch someone like me going over something like this. So I really appreciate it. So I'll see you guys until the next time. Goodbye.